Yesterday we spoke about this disagreement that appears between various different authorities about what's required with regards to the bread, whether you need to cut it, you don't need to cut it. The other day we spoke about the original machloikes of having two breads. What's the source of having two breads? Rashi is of the opinion that we need two breads, right? Like we mentioned, I think you mentioned it, that the double portion that was brought down on Erev Shabbos in the desert. So we're, in a sense, we're recreating whatever took place over there, right? So we get to Friday and we have two challahs sitting over there on the table in order to represent the two different portions of manna that was given. The Das Kanin, which is one of the commentaries of the Chumash, she's got a completely different approach. He says every day two portions of manna fell down, right? One for the morning and one for the evening, which means that every single day of the week. On Friday, they got a double. So everyone's in agreement that Friday was double. The question is how much, right? So the Das Kanim says that they got 4 loaves came down on Shabbos, and that was to take that was to give on Erev Shabbos, and that was for the morning meal, which leaves you with three, right? So Friday morning you eat 1, and then you've got 3 left. And on Leil Shabbos, you would eat 1, and that left you with 2 for Shabbos morning. And then, when you get to the third meal, that would leave you with 1 loaf of bread. Now, we're going to see, why am I telling you all of this? Because we're going to see that there's a machlokes about whether you're supposed to have 2 loaves of bread for the third meal or not. Do you need them? So if we're reenacting, like the Das Kanim, right? If we're reenacting what took place in during the desert, then Lamaisa, when we get to the third meal, we don't need 2 loaves of bread, right? Because we're following what happened. There were 4 loaves of bread that came down on Friday morning, or four portions of manna. 1 got eaten on Friday, and then 1 got eaten on Friday night. 1 got eaten on Shabbos morning, and that leaves you with 1 for Shabbos afternoon. Now, according to Rashi, we follow, that's exactly what we do. We only eat 1 loaf at each meal. That's Rashi's approach, right? We're going to see in a minute a different approach. Now, coming up, somebody called the Rashba, we spoke about him the other day. The Rashba is not in agreement with Rashi. He says that we're not eating 2 loaves, we're not having 2 loaves of bread to reenact what took place over there in the desert, but rather the idea of Lechem Mishnah, the idea of having 2 loaves of bread, is that on Shabbos we double what we usually have. And he actually brings some fascinating proofs to what he's saying. He says, for example, every day when there was a temple, they brought a korban tamid, which was a lamb offering, right? On Shabbos, they brought 2 for korban musaf, which means you've doubled things up. Every day we recite 1 shir shel yom, right, the Psalm of the day. However, on Shabbos, on Leil Shabbos, we recite 2. Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos, and Hashem Malach goes Lavesh. Which means that says the Rashba, the truth is a very beautiful idea, that everything seems to be doubled up on Shabbos. We get like double of everything, including in Mitzvah Hashem, double bracha as well. And the reason why we have 2 loaves, says the Rashba, is because of that. Now, what the practical ramification is going to be what? So first of all, the first practical ramification is, do you need Lechem Mishnah for the third meal? According to the Rashba, you do, right? According to Rashi, you don't. So let's have a look and see what's the halacha. So the Ramah, which is the halachic authority for the Ashkenazim, writes that the common minhag in Ashkenaz, which is going back into Western Europe, is to use only 1 challah for the last meal, right? For that third meal on Shabbos afternoon. That's going according to who? Like the Das Kanim said. The Das Kanim said that we started with 4, 3, 2, 1. However, the Ramah says even though that was seemed to be the common minhag in his day, nevertheless, he says it's better to have Lechem Mishnah at the third meal as well. So it is better to have 2 loaves of bread.
But you could luckily just have 1.
If you don't have an alternative, for sure you can certainly make hamotzi over 1. The Rambam, Maimonides, and the Shulchan Aruch, right? You should have Lechem Mishnah for the third meal as well. right? Which means that seems to be the common halacha by the Sfadim is to have for Suda Shlishit as well. So here, repercussion number one, are you supposed to have or not? If you follow Rashi, then you're not supposed to have Lechem Mishnah, you're not supposed to have two. If you follow the Reuven, you are supposed to, the Rashba, you are supposed to have two, and it seems that the vast majority of the poskim are of the opinion that it's better to have two. Rabbi Yosef writes for the Sfadim that it's correct to have Lechem Mishnah, to have 2 loaves of bread for Surah Shlishit, and like we mentioned before, the Ramos says that it's the right thing to do as well. Repercussion number 2, are women obligated with Lechem Mishnah? Now, again, what's the problem? What's the issue over here? Women are exempt from all time-bound positive mitzvahs. So the question over here is, how are we going to define what the mitzvah of Lechem Mishnah, what is it? The Rabbeinu Nissim, one of the classic commentaries on the Chumash, writes that the women are obligated in the mitzvah of Lechem Mishnah because they were involved in the nes of the double portion that fell on Erev Shabbos. Right? So even though under normal circumstances you could say that women should be exempt from the mitzvah, nevertheless, because they were a part of what happened over there in the desert, so they should be using Lechem Mishnah as well. The Ran has got his own approach. Rabbeinu Nissim, he's got his own approach over here. He's of the opinion that women are obligated, everyone holds like this, women are obligated in Kiddush. So if you don't have any men at home, right? So a woman should make Kiddush for everybody else. So the Ran is of the opinion that all of these things that apply to the halachas of Shabbos, they are like Kiddush. If there's an obligation for women to recite Kiddush, then there's an obligation for women to have Lechem Mishnah as well. It all strings together, right? All of these halachas are going to be part and parcel of themselves. And Mishnah Brura and the Aruch HaShulchan, they all rule that women should be, they should have Lechem Mishnah in their Sudas. The third repercussion...
Is that in all of the Sudas?
In all of the Sudas, all 3 of them. The third repercussion over here is Lechem Mishnah an obligation on Yom Tov? Now again, what are we looking at? Rashi says that we're reenacting what took place on Erev Shabbos. If that's the case, do we need Lechem Mishnah on Yom Tov as well? So the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch, right, the Code of Jewish Law, write that the obligation for Lechem Mishnah is on Yom Tov as well, right? Not just on Shabbos. The Mishnah Brura explains that there are midrashim which say that not only was there a double amount of manna that fell on Erev Shabbos, but there was also a double amount which fell on Erev Yom Tov as well. And the nes of that double is applicable for Yom Tov, which means like this: even if you follow Rashi, so what we're doing is that we're reenacting what took place, right? Over there in the desert. And if you follow the Rashba, it's also this concept of double bracha, which means that the double bracha is there on Yom Tov as well. Good. So now we know that everybody needs to have Lechem Mishnah. The last thing that we have to get through over here is cutting the challah. Right? We spoke about cutting the challah, in order to get ourselves ready for the mitzvah, in order to speed up the process, whatever it is. Which challah needs to get cut? So we're going to see over here that there's a whole little thing over here about which one you're supposed to do. Of course, there is a machlokes amongst the various authorities about what you're supposed to do. The Beis Yosef, one of the classic authorities for, halachic authorities, the Beis Yosef writes, he cites different practices, right? The emphasis is like this. First of all, you should know that when you come to make a moitzi, you need to put one challah on top of the other. That's the correct way to do it. The question over here is, which one are you cutting in order to make hamoitzi? So, according to some opinions, you should cut the bottom challah, and according to others, you should cut the top. Of course, right? We're Jewish, no? Yeah. Let's have a look and see. That why would you cut the top challah? So there's a concept in the halacha of ein ma'avirim ala mitzvah. That if a mitzvah comes your way, don't pass up the opportunity to do it. To fill in. Right? When you put your tefillin away back in the bag, so the custom is to put the tefillin shel rosh on the left-hand side of the bag and the tefillin shel yad on the right-hand side of the bag. Why is that? So that when you come to, for us normative, regular people, that when you come to take them out, that you shouldn't pass over the tefillin shel rosh in order to pull out the tefillin shel yad. Ein marin ala mitzvah. That's the one that says straight away, that's the one to take out. So according to some opinions, you need to cut the top challah, because the top challah is the one that you're going to have to use in order to make hamoitzi with. However, just when everything is nice and clear, the Beis Yosef writes that we cut the lower challah first on Friday night, and it's for Kabbalistic reasons. The Ashkenazi custom is to cut the bottom challah at night and to cut the top challah on Shabbos morning. And all of this, again, is being built around Kabbalistic reasons that, of course, I can't go into with you because you still have 39 years and how many? 51 weeks and 3 days that you have to learn before we can dabble in Kabbalah.
Shabbos night. First, cut lower challah.
Cut the lower challah, and on Shabbos morning, cut the top challah. What do we do with Ein Ma'avir Mala Mitzvahs? How do we deal with that? What do we say? You're not supposed to cut the bottom challah, because you cut the bottom challah, what are you doing? You're ignoring, as it were, the top challah in favor of the bottom one. So the accepted solution to all of this is that you cut the bottom challah on Friday night, and then when you put the other challah on top of it, you make sure that the bottom challah is sticking out a little bit. So the bottom challah is closer to you. Right, so you've got the top challah on the top, you've got the bottom challah on the bottom, but the bottom challah, they're not sitting right one on top of the other one, but rather the bottom one is sticking out a little bit, and that is that way. The Ein Ma'avir Mitzvahs, you've got the one which is closer to you, which is the one that you're going to cut. The Mishnah Berurah does offer a second option, which is after you've made the bracha, you take out the bottom challah and you put it on top of the top challah. I think that this solution is a lot simpler. In all events, Ashkenazim should follow their family custom, right? Which means that if your family custom is to cut the top one, then cut the top one, right? If you don't have a family custom, then you should follow what the Mishnah Berurah is saying over here. The Mishnah Berurah is
cut top one, bottom one. And then do you cover them when you say the bracha?
You can cover them up again, and you should lift them up. So all 10 of your fingers should be touching the challahs when you lift them up, and you make the bracha of hamoitzi lechem min haaretz. Some people have the custom to lift up the challahs when they say hamoitzi lechem min haaretz, who brings out bread from the ground that they lifted up. Then some people hold them up already from the beginning of the bracha.
Should your hands be touching the challahs or the cloth? Doesn't it matter?
I don't think it. I mean, I think optimally, perhaps it's best that you're touching the challah, but if you lift them up using the cloth itself, then I think it's going to be okay. What about Sfardim? Everything we've done right now is according to the Ashkenazi minhag. What about Sfardim? So there's a debate, of course, about the correct way to do it. The Kaf HaChaim, which is one of the classic sources for halacha rules in accordance with the Arizal, that you should cut the top challah. In all events, you should cut the top challah. Rav Avadi Yosef writes that the Sfardim should follow the ruling of the Shulchan Aruch and to cut the bottom challah. Right? However, he says that those people that are cutting the top one according to the Kabbalistic combinations and according to the custom of the Arizal, so fine, that's what they're doing. Then you can't tell them that it's wrong. Once you've cut the challah, once you've made the bracha, and then you cut the challah, and the first thing you're supposed to do is you're supposed to cut a piece for yourself. Whoever's making hamoitzi should cut a piece for himself, dip it into the salt. Now, again, there is an opinion, it's a Kabbalistic dimension of dipping challah 3 times into the salt. You may have seen that. You may not have paid any attention to it. You may not have realized it was taking place. Some people have that custom. Some people don't.
I thought that was because dipping is not as effective as sprinkling it on. I thought they were just trying to maximize the probability that there was actually salt on it.
No, there's absolutely no. all of this is symbolic, which means that, if you dip it in and nothing really stays on, which is very unlikely anyway because it's going to stick on
It
a little
tastes
bit
nice
of
with the
salt.
doesn't it?
Yeah. So some people have the custom to dip 3 times into salt, and some people have the custom just to dip once into salt. Whatever you do, it's going to be absolutely fine. Shaking salt on top as well. But you take the first piece should be eaten by the person who made hamotzi. After that, you should then cut up the rest of the challah. Not to cut up the whole challah and then take a piece and eat it, because you've made the brocha already. You're trying to minimize the gap between the brocha and the fact that you're eating the bread, right? So the best thing to do, even if you've got a lot of people over there waiting, is to cut your piece of challah you cut first, and then the rest you can cut up afterwards. There is a custom which is prevalent amongst the Hasidim that you give out very large pieces of challah, and that's supposed to keep you going through the whole meal. Now, it's been a long time since I was a bocher trying to scrounge meals on Shabbos. And the last time I saw it was, like 30 plus years ago. But there is such a custom. You might get a big wedge of challah, and you should know that you're getting that enormous piece of challah. Normally you're getting that enormous piece of challah because that's supposed to last you through to the end of the meal. Don't wolf it all down and then expect to get some more.
Wow. So some people, they'll make hamotzi, cut the challah, then have one bite, a small bite.
That's fine. That's
down,
absolutely fine. And then start cutting up and sending it around. Yeah, that's okay.
You'd have to finish.
You don't have to eat a kibetza of challah in order to be able to carry on. You do need to eat a kibetza of challah during the meal, right, to make sure that you've fulfilled your obligation for eating bread and for being able to recite Birchas Hamazon.
And what about the minhag of throwing the challah? Or is that just some crazy people that I've been to?
What, throwing it to people?
Again, I thought that was practical.
I really don't know. I mean, in the truth is that you're not really supposed to throw bread around.
No.
The Gemara says that it normally has negative repercussions to it.
I've seen people do it though. Have you had that before?
All the time.
Yeah.
I thought it was just practical. The father can't get the attention of the kids, so he just tosses it to them.
I don't know. We've never had a problem with that. Kids are normally very excited when the challah comes by, and we just put them into a plate or tray and just send it around.
Or the tray is not close enough.
True.
I
I like the challah boards that turn into a.
Oh, they're neat. Yeah.
Oh, the cutting board, the telescope.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're neat.
Yeah.
Of course, the only drawback with them is that if you need to cut up the second challah, your challah board is now.
Going around. Is there a halachic issue with those boards because technically to be covered underneath it's not whole because it's got kind of.
I don't think so.
Holes within it.
Is there a halachic issue about cutting up the second challah on Friday night?
Hey, you came in just a little bit late, but according to Rashi, there is. According to Rashi, you're supposed to only eat one challah, and the second challah is used for the next meal, and then on it goes. According to the Rashba, there's no problem whatsoever. You can eat as many challahs as you want. And if you want to finish up both challahs, that's fine. And if you need to bring out even more challah, that's fine as well.
If you've got loads of people, you can just buy more challahs and just keep cutting.
For sure, 100%. What you do need to try and do, if possible, is that the hamotzi, those 2 challahs being used for hamotzi, at least everyone should get a little bit of that. And then afterwards, you want to bring out, let's say you've got lots of guests and you want to bring out another 2 or 3 challahs and to cut them up and put them onto the table so that people can take if they want. There's no problem whatsoever with that. It's 100% okay.
The salt. Now, obviously, on a Shabbos, people are very, they have the salt available. Whenever you make hamotzi, should you have your salt? Yeah,
good question. You're really supposed to dip your bread into salt every single time that you make hamotzi, regardless of what day of the week it is.
Oh. But if you're having a sandwich, then can you theoretically assume that the contents already contain some?
Yeah. So what's the chat? For sure, the contents are going to have some salt in it. Otherwise, I have no idea what you're eating it for. But it's not considered to be good enough because you really need to. There's an inyan of dip it. There's an inyan here. I'll explain to you where does it come from. On the altar in the temple, almost everything was salted when it got offered up. The only things that weren't actually were liquid offerings. But even there was even an offering that was brought, which was a wood offering, when they just brought wood and the wood was salted as well. Now, when we
No wonder
eat,
you love salt.
huh?
No wonder we all
Yeah,
love salt.
yeah. Well, in a minute we'll see a beautiful idea about salt. But when you eat, you're supposed to be, we don't have an altar, we don't have a temple today, right? But your table becomes like a mizbeach, it becomes like your altar. And therefore, when we come to eat, we make this sort of like symbolic action of dipping our bread into the salt. It's as if our meal has now become a korban, right? If we approach our eating properly, then we're dedicating this food and we're dedicating the energy that it gives us to serving God in a better fashion, right? It's a very beautiful idea. It really is. Now that's applicable throughout the week. It doesn't make any difference what day of the week it is, and that means that you should be dipping things into salt. What you may look, if you see people around, there's no salt available, they may dip it into something else instead.
Yeah.
So you like this ubiquitous when you go to Israeli, like there's always like salads sitting on the table. There may be no salt over there.
Yeah.
You could dip your bread into one of the salads. It's a symbolic thing to show that it's taking the place of the salt.
Oh, okay.
What
And the hummus is a perfectly acceptable alternative also if you don't have salt.
again? Not to. It's the pshat over here is not to dip it in and to take like to come out with this enormous dollop of hummus on top of your bread when you're coming to fulfill the mitzvah of eating the bread to begin with. It's just to make a symbolic thing of dipping it in. If there's something there that's more salty than something else, then maybe that would be a better thing to use. Like so, if you've got pickled cucumbers, and especially if they're pickled in brine, so if you just dip it in, you don't have to take a cucumber with you, right? Just to dip it in, some kind of a symbolic action.
Okay.
When I was growing up conservative, we had a tradition of sprinkling salt on it with the salt shaker. I never saw anyone dipping it in until I got to Chabad, I guess.
Yeah. Same here.
Is there a problem with just
I don't think so. It's more genteel. It's certainly more sophisticated to sprinkle your salt.
You get
I
more
do with my
coverage
cookie,
as well.
yeah.
It tastes nicer because you get
It
more
does.
salt around the heart. Whereas if people dip it,
in one place, maybe, and
yeah. You might
I don't know. I've been
Toast
in lots of homes where they do it like that.
what's that?
I've been in lots of homes where they do it like that. I don't think there's any problem.
I mean, we always used to use this. I mean, this is now I now know this is a melacha, but we used to use a salt grinder, and we just used to around the challah
Fresh salt
on Shabbos, which I believe is a potential
might be a little bit of a problem.
because grinding of the salt, isn't it?
Right. Toichen. Let me just tell you a little something about salt, which is really, again, a very beautiful idea. What is his preoccupation with salt? Jews like salt, right? I once heard a great joke, actually. It's Scotsman. He says, my gosh, he says, I'm thirsty. I must have a whiskey. And the Englishman says, I'm thirsty. I must have a beer. And the Jew says, I'm thirsty. I must have diabetes. It's, good old Jewish angst. What's the preoccupation with salt, right? So salt on the altar and salt in the temple. Huge amounts of salt were being used. What's the idea? Salt is it's a fascinating commodity. It really is.
Amazing.
I remember as a kid watching my mother, never understanding this, watching my mother make cakes and putting in that, like that pinch of salt.
Yeah.
So in the recipe, a pinch of salt. I never understanding because everybody knows that salt is not sweet. How on earth can you put salt into cake?
Salty.
Oh, so my
Flavor it, yeah.
mother. Oh, so my mother told me that the pshat of salt is when you put in the right amount, it completely negates itself. You don't taste the salt anymore, and it enhances all the flavors that are in there. And that's why when you take salt and you put it into a cake mixture, right, what's it doing at the end? You won't taste the salt at all. I mean, if you put in too much, you will. But if you put in the right amount, you won't taste the salt at all. But, like you said, it enhances the flavors of everything that's in there and adds a dimension that wouldn't be there without it. The idea of salt, this preoccupation that we have with salt, and the salt in the temple, and the salt with the sacrifices, and the salt in our bread, is to remind us that we need to negate our own egos in order to enhance HaKadosh Baruch Hu's majesty, God's majesty here in the world. That's what it's supposed to be coming to teach us. And it's interesting, right? This has this for a psychological insight. If you put too much salt into something, it becomes inedible. Which means that if you negate too much of your ego, then you're also doing something wrong. Too big an ego is no good, and too small an ego is also no good. Because a person needs to have a sense of self-worth. A person needs to have a sense of that he has this relationship with God, and that God is interested in this relationship with him, and there he can start building up and turning it into something even more significant. And that really is the idea of, the salt is really something which is pretty fundamental, and it's something which is very beautiful. And that's why I thought once like this. Sefer Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, right, which is a book which is dedicated to what? Laws of?
Kashrus.
Laws of Kashrus, but mostly the laws of the Levim and the Kohanim, the laws of the Beis Hamikdash. Here, it's interesting. The laws of the book of Leviticus starts with Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe lemor. That God spoke to Moses saying. For a long time, it was very interesting. Maybe wonder. Surely you would imagine that if it's talking about the laws of the Kohanim, it should begin with God speaking to Aaron, not to Moses. But I think the pshat over here is really that this whole idea of the negation of the ego. Moshe Rabbeinu was, he did this in the most expert way possible. The negation of his own ego in order to allow HaKadosh Baruch Hu's majesty to be revealed in the world is something that really was Moshe Rabbeinu's field. He's called an Ish Anav. He was the most modest of people, the most humble of people. At the end of his life, God calls him Moshe Avdi, you're my servant, right? This is like the ultimate accolade, to be the servant of God. And I think that's the pshat. Why in Leviticus does it begin with Moshe Rabbeinu? Because, a Kohen, it is conceivable that a Kohen perhaps could get a little bit big-headed, right? I mean, he's doing tremendous things. Not you, Sam, obviously. Your modesty is legendary.
Much like Moshe Rabbeinu's.
He could learn a thing or two from you.
Yeah, you should.
But it is conceivable that a Kohen could become a little bit big-headed. No, he's doing tremendous things. He's allowing the temple to function the way that it's supposed to the way it's supposed to function. Even today, right? We wait for the Kohanim to come here in Israel to come up and bless us every single morning. When you go to shul, I don't know about you people, you go to shul. Well, for you it's not applicable because you're a Kohen. But if I go to shul and there's no Kohen one morning for whatever the reason, it's a disappointment. There's like something missing, something's missing from the avodah of the morning. And so I think maybe the pshat over there is to teach the Kohanim this idea of humbleness. The idea of the salt is there to remind them, don't get too big for your britches. And that's why we eat salt every time we come to eat a meal and we're eating bread. We use salt to dip our bread into the salt, because we need just to reinforce that the whole time. We need to remember that one. The right amount of salt is going to enhance all the flavors. The wrong amount of salt is either not going to be felt at all, or it's going to be felt too much, and that's not good. Either one of those is not good. Okay, good. In Mitzvah Hashem, we're going to stop over here.